Hi, Sarita. Lovely to chat
Hi,
again.
Jule. Yes, it's great to be back with you.
Yes, so today we are going to talk about internalized beliefs, those beliefs, thoughts, experiences that we've kind of hidden in our subconscious and form quite a large part of our behaviors and reactions in life, even if we're not aware of them.
Yes, they could be, you probably could bunch them all together and sort of talk about it in terms of conditioning or personality or ways in which we have learnt to operate in the world based on what information was coming in from our
Absolutely.
earliest life. Would that be
Yeah.
a sort of overarching idea of where we're going?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like the stories that we tell ourselves that we make
Mm.
from experience. But you're right, they are definitely from formed in childhood. And most of us can, if we do a lot of the inner work or the shadow work, trace them back to those early years under
Mm.
kind of 8 years old or so.
Mm.
But yeah, they're the stories that we tell ourselves about situations, or they're the stories that are given to us by, parents or teachers often, or other adults in our life, and they become internalized beliefs. Like a child at school who's always been sent out because they can't sit still are classified as being naughty. So they
Mm.
internalize that story of being the naughty child, and that carries with them often into, well, throughout school and into adulthood. So,
Yes, and it's the ever evolving understanding, isn't it, of what these stories are. And they're not always negative, I'm aware. Some things that we take on or lessons that we think we learn or ideas about what life is, some of them are actually good.
absolutely, they are. Yeah, we're a whole mixed bag, aren't we, of of all these stories, and some of them we actually, these stories form our identity. I think
Yes,
that's a good way of saying it. And so, yeah, you're right. The good, and I don't want to use the words good or bad. I'm going to say the ones that we want to keep, the positive
that's a good,
ones.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We could be called creative as children, and then we're like, oh, I'm creative, and that becomes part of your identity, and you take that through to adulthood, and it becomes a really beautiful, lovely practice for yourself. So absolutely, there are some amazing ones that you don't want to change and you want to keep.
Yes. Or, ideas around money, observing or learning about money from an early age and how you might take on the idea that I'm always abundant or
Yes.
I always have money or it's easy to make money or it's easy to find work, whatever that is, or I love to work, all
Yeah,
of those types of things.
it's literally every single belief that we have has been formed from somewhere. We're not born with the beliefs. So every single one of them can be traced back to something. And in, counseling or deep kind of subconscious work, hypnotherapy, dream therapy, that's where we go back to, is those early
Mm.
ones that you do want to change. And that's where it starts. So it's actually a lovely process of finding the story. I see it quite poetically. It's quite a beautiful, I don't know what you would call it, like unstorying, I guess. You go back into the original one and then you become the author of it and you change it. And I love helping people through that, as I'm sure we both do. That's the
Well,
core of our
it's that
work.
unfolding mysteriousness of life, isn't it? It's like, who am I really? Who am I with these beliefs, or who am I based on these beliefs? Who am I without them? And everything in between. It's just a voyage of discovery, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. And I get so excited with working with people with their identity because this is
Mm.
what I'm passionate about. Yeah, is those collection of stories which form our identity, our
Mm.
personality,
Mm.
our the way that we feel we show up in the world, and the way that we perceive others to perceive
Mm.
us as well.
Mm.
Because those
Mm.
two things are very different, actually. If you kind of sit down, it's actually quite a nice activity to sit down. I'm not sure if you've ever done that, and split like a piece of paper into outer beliefs and inner beliefs. and see the difference between them, like what you think other people think of you and what you actually think of you,
Oh,
and then
no, I
compare the
haven't
two.
done that formally. No, I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
It's quite
Great
an
idea.
interesting process because more often than not, those two sides are not the same.
Yeah.
They're different. So, but that's what forms our identity. So the cohesive kind of relationship between what we perceive and then how we feel that we're being perceived.
Yes. It takes up a lot of our attention, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It does. Well, it does when you're aware of it, but otherwise it runs completely automatically, and you just run through life without, you just think that that is an inherent fixed part of you that cannot be changed. But
That's
when
it.
when you start doing all the inner work, which can be called many different things, it can be called inner child work, shadow work, parts work, have you got any other? I can't think of
No,
any
I
other
think you've
names.
covered
I
it.
think I think I've,
I think you've covered it.
well,
What intrigues me is the identification aspect. I think that's where the suffering is. Otherwise we would just be skipping along in life, wouldn't we? And just be happy with all our beliefs, wouldn't we? In an ideal world, if we had all positive beliefs and we didn't come up against any of them in any kind of negative way, just painting a picture here, we wouldn't really look into them. We wouldn't
no.
really have any drive to look into them, really,
Well,
would we?
we
It's
wouldn't.
really when they become uncomfortable in some
It
way, or they've always been uncomfortable, or they become more uncomfortable that we actually start to inquire.
Yes, or they stop us from doing something, or they're making us very stuck in something. Yeah, there's always a reason why something comes up for us to change it. But also,
Mm,
I I don't know, maybe I like the dark side of things and I like the deep transformational side of things. And I think like if we were all born with the perfect stories of, I am worthy, I am good, I am successful, I am abundant, and all of those, then I don't know, is that kind of boring? I like the depth and I
mm.
like the
Skimming
I
along the
like
surface of life type of thing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's great reward in going to some of these, what we deem negative ones, which I don't see them like that. I see them as
Mm.
opportunities for great transformation, actually. And I just love witnessing that in other people and also in myself. I love working with that side of our psyche, our inner
Mm.
world.
Often I describe it both for myself and for clients is that this beautiful building a relationship with oneself, like as if we'd met a new lover, and we want to know everything about that person. We want to know why they think the way they think. When we meet that special person and we're in that initial flow of, I want to know every cell of this person. If we can turn that same inquiry or that same passion towards ourselves, it becomes it's exciting, isn't it? To
It
sort of
is.
really understand what makes us tick, what holds us back, what makes us uncomfortable, what do we shy away from in ourselves, and what do we embrace in ourselves. It's
Yeah.
such a beautiful journey
It's a
on that
beautiful
level.
journey, and that's why it's a lifelong journey. It never ends. And I look back at my own life and I can't quite believe how uh, unconscious I was of all of these things. I literally just lived on automatic. I didn't think
Mm,
that anything could be changed. I
mm,
thought that our personalities were very fixed and these different parts of us were very fixed. I just had no awareness of it. And I wish I'd
mm,
known much younger and much earlier about how you can change because every part of us, every piece of our identity that's been stitched together to make our whole can be changed. And so it's to me that's really exciting. Like we can be whoever we want to be. You just change it one piece at a time. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a years long, decades long process that never really truly ends. And yeah, I think for the people who enjoy doing that sort of work, the inner work, it just you can't turn away from it. It's just so
No, it becomes such an integral part of your life, doesn't it?
it does.
It's the same as, you know, waking up and breathing, isn't it? Almost. It's like, well, who am I today? Or how am I showing up today? What's in play? What, as to use your languaging, what part or parts
Yeah.
are
Hmm.
expressing themselves today? You
Yes,
know, and it's fascinating. It's really fascinating to delve in
it is.
and to understand that we are, you know, we're great learners. We're
Yes.
intrinsically great learners. That's one thing that comes through for me as I learn more and more about my own journey and the journey with my clients is that we know how to learn. And that's great and exciting news because we can, if we've learned something once, we can relearn it or we can change it. The trick is becoming aware of it.
Yeah, it's the keystone to everything is the awareness. It's the very first step. And just being aware of it does not change it, but it is the most important step because how can
Mm,
you change something that you're not aware of? And yeah, it is a beautiful journey. And I guess that's what we both help people through is because it doesn't just change after one realization or one you know, awareness, it does change through the experience of reliving a different situation and reflecting on it with a potential new story away from the story that we thought we were was fixed or we were told when we were younger. If that makes sense. Maybe we should
yep.
find an example. Maybe that would be easier. Um, yeah, I mean, I think thinking on the fly here, I can think of an
Yeah,
example.
that's okay.
So I had like driving anxiety. I did a little short video about this a while ago. Um, Driving anxiety. No one could tell me why. I didn't even pass my driving test till I was in my early 30s because I just had no interest or whatever to drive. But when I did, I was very anxious and overthinking it and very hyper vigilant about it, and I never knew why. And anyone who I would ask about it would just say, oh, you just need to practice, you just need to be more confident on the road. And it was nothing to do with confidence, and it took me quite some years to understand that it was because my I had an internalized belief that everybody was in cars around me, shaming me, criticizing me, and judging me for my driving because I grew up with a father who heavily did that to other people. He would always be the one that's like, look at her, like, oh, she's so silly, like, look at how she's parking, or women are such bad drivers. And it was so internalized, but very unconscious. And that was like a light bulb moment. Once I understood that and realized it, I was like, I don't like being on the road because I think I'm like shrinking. If I looked at my posture, like shrinking, like, oh, I shouldn't be here. I'm annoying everybody. Everybody hates me being here on the road. I'm making
Mm,
everyone's day so annoying because all I'm
mm,
imagining is everyone in cars being like my dad, going, look
mm,
at her. Why did she
mm.
do that? Like, why did she park like that? Like, so that was a personal internalized belief. And once I was aware of it, I could fully change that. I don't think that now. And if it does start to creep in, if I'm not particularly resilient that day and it starts to creep in, I just go, I actually don't care. Who cares? If so what if I am annoying someone? Like I literally don't care anymore. So it completely changed
How
over
did you
time.
come to the understand? How did you connect with that younger you? This is sort of more my languaging rather than parts. It's that younger you felt that was the way the world was. That was a truth.
It was only as I started to do inner work, and I'm going to use the word stories again because I like the word story. Once I understood that that's how the psyche was formed and that's how our beliefs were formed, and anxiety is always like a trailhead or a pathway to understand a core belief because it doesn't
Mm,
exist on its own. And so it was just the awareness of understanding how the psyche works as I, was, training some years ago, learning about all of these things, and I would turn it to things in my own life and
mm,
suddenly just had a bit of a self-reflection on that. Okay, why is it? And then I'm like, okay, what am I thinking as I'm coming up to a red light, which was one of my triggers?
mm,
What am I thinking? And I'm thinking that the car behind me is swearing at me, shouting at me, and saying, why did you stop? You're the most annoying female driver that's ever existed because you've now ruined my day because you stopped at the red light and you should have gone through. Because that's what my dad would have said. Like,
mm.
so it was
So
just,
you were in that moment, you were able to connect with the subconscious or younger self that directly experienced those things.
yeah, yeah. It was, yeah, the awareness of like understanding how these stories are formed. You then
Mm,
turn that to the things in your own life is, yeah.
yeah. And
So,
when from the place that you sit in now, right, the adult you, the you that knows that people don't, well, some people do, road
well,
ragey people
they
probably
do,
do,
but
but not
yeah. No,
everybody does. And even if they
yeah,
did, it doesn't need to affect you. That's your grown-up self that
yeah.
basically can be logical about it, can then kind of speak to that subconscious thought process and go, actually, there's a sort of a permission to let it go in a way, isn't there? Or to put it to the side, or to what do we do? We by understanding that it's not everything, not the total truth of everything, somehow removes it from its power, like it doesn't have so much power over us.
Yeah, and I think we all, have our own language of how that process works. And again, I use the story language, so I'm rewriting the story. I'm changing the narrative, kind of dissolving the old story to create a new one. So it's almost
Mm,
like a page into, I'm a very visual person, so everything to me has a visual with it. So it's like that's the story on my page. Now I turned the book open at the realization that I understand where my internalized belief has come from. It's come from growing up with somebody who was overly critical with other people on the road. Now there's some pages that I can create a new story. So it did not happen overnight. Like I was still anxious for quite some months, actually, maybe even a year or so. But every time I had an experience, every time I had a trigger, or if someone, I live in a place where it's very road ragey, actually, it's quite well known for that. There is actually quite a few people who will be like gesturing on the road, like that. And you do get that. So I had to encounter that, but with a new story instead of, oh
mm,
my goodness, I've ruined the day. Like, why did I leave the house today? I should have just stayed at home. I wouldn't have ruined that person's day. Like, I'm so annoying. It's a completely different story. It's like, wow, they must be so angry. They must be so unaware of their own internal kind of mechanisms that they're projecting all of this anger out onto other people for a really minor thing, which is actually the right thing. Like, oh, you stopped at a red light because I'm
yeah.
supposed to, over there, instead of going through on a on a dark green, I don't know. But yeah, it was what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I'm a bit round the houses with how I'm trying to explain it is it took micro experiences always of new things and then reflecting on it and going, actually, no, I don't feel like I was annoying. Like, I feel like I had every right to stop at the red light. And it was that person who was the issue, not me in that situation. And I had to do that like dozens of times, maybe even
Mm,
hundreds of times. I don't recall over a period of time to
mm,
fully change the belief because that's how you change beliefs is through experience, through the smaller experiences over time, repetitive. And eventually it changes completely and then it becomes automatic. That's the other end of it. It becomes automatically not a concern. Whereas
yes.
before you're automatically anxious. Now I'm automatically not. So
Yes.
I've gone through the whole
It is
spectrum.
that. I often explain it to people as if you were going to the gym and you hadn't been to the gym for a while, your arm muscles are just not going to be strong. You're going to have to keep going and doing small and repetitive exercises to build those muscles up. So when you've got a new belief or a new story that you want to really absorb as part of yourself, it is that repetition, isn't it? It's that continual going to the place, changing the story, keeping building that muscle of the new belief until it becomes just, oh, I can pick up that weight. Oh, I can stop at a red light and not have any negative feelings about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on a neurological level, you're literally changing the neural pathways. And so they do just fire automatically at the end of that. So you don't even have to become conscious of it because it takes a lot of energy actually to be constantly conscious of something. It takes a
Yes.
lot of power to do that, as in like mental power, energetic power to be able to keep on there. So it actually feels harder at first because you're having to really focus on it. You're having to really reflect on it and make time for it. But eventually there is, just that light at the end of the tunnel that it becomes easier and then it becomes automatic.
You make a really good point there, Jewel. It's a lot of mental energy to keep going and changing the belief. And I often say to people, and I use it myself, this idea of externalization. So, when you want to have a different way of viewing something, part of this, the support tool can be this idea that you put a message outside of yourself somewhere to remind you, that jogs your memory. I often say, put a post-it note on the fridge, put a post-it note in your car. It's okay for me to stop at a red light or whatever. It's using that external messaging to help with that hard work that you might, because you're living inside your own mind all the time. And it's been wired, as you say, with that belief system in whatever way. And so it takes time to switch those neural pathways over. So this externalizing of the messaging is a great tool to kind of relieve some of the hard work of just continually having to remind yourself. I think it's easier when you've got to get in the car. That's probably already an externalizing messaging that says, oh, I've got this old belief I want to change. But if it's not a car, if it's say, I want to remember that I matter to myself, something sort of deep and sort of intangible in some respects. There's the bathroom mirror is a great one. While you're cleaning your teeth, you're looking at this message that says, reminder, I matter to me. This type of stuff. It's like the affirmation thing, but not the affirmation thing, because I think plenty of people have realized that the affirmation tool can have its drawbacks, but it's more jogging the mind to remember that there's something that we want to believe that we haven't up to this point really believed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those reminders. And there's many ways of doing it. And you gave some great examples with the post-it notes. And yeah, some people have reminders or little alarms on their phone, like 3 times a day, just check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What are you
That's
being
it.
triggered by? And some people do have like a future practice where it's like a letter from your future self to yourself now, or a letter to your inner child, like so you can go back into the past. So there's lots of different ways of doing that. So yeah, whichever way resonates with you. And you mentioned the affirmations, and yeah, like the standardized kind of universal affirmations, I find I don't resonate with those. But if you go into your awareness, your subconscious, and you find your core belief, which could be, I am an annoying driver, let's just say that. If you can create an affirmation specifically for that belief, a very personalized one, and then use it, then that's I find much more
Exactly.
effective.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. That's the key to it, because I think yeah. That is what it has to be. It has to have an element of a truth that you've experienced in
Yes,
yourself.
yeah. So it's almost like the opposite. So yeah, it's quite an that's I'd say quite an important part of the process. Identify the core belief. I am unconsidered, I am unimportant, I am too much, like whatever that may be, and then create an opposite affirmation. I am what would be the opposites of that? I am enough.
Well, I think it's very much a personal, in my experience with
Yeah.
myself and clients, it's such a personal journey to come up with what you want, what messaging you want to give yourself, you know. And
It is.
that is the main part of the process, I think.
Yeah, it is. And that's what I actually help people through. So, like, firstly, two th key things I help people with is to identify the belief, to go
Yep.
into the subconscious and find that hidden belief as early as possible, because
Yeah.
that belief can actually happen dozens or hundreds of times, as a in later childhood, in adolescence, in early adulthood and adulthood as well. So sometimes you get to one and you're like, oh, I was 16 years old, but they'll be the same, but a younger one. There's always a younger one under kind of like 8 years
There
old.
can be,
Yeah,
yes.
so find
Yes.
that one and then create and then like
Yes.
it kind of collaborate to go, okay, which words resonate? Is it, you know, yeah, I just kind of throw some words out and see which ones resonate because words and language is very resonant with people as well. And then create a personalized affirmation. And then you have to do the work. It doesn't just end there. You have to do it repetitively over time to
Yes.
remind yourself and keep reflecting and then create the new story based on each situation that triggers that old belief in the
Yeah.
in the future.
It's just occurred to me to bring up something else in that process too, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. So the element of the subconscious, let's just talk about that for a minute because look, the big part of this is identifying, isn't it? Because we're
Mm.
so used to being in ourselves. We're so used to this is who I am, this is what I think about everything. I don't even think about what I think about everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I'm going about my business. So the process itself is just so nuanced, isn't it? No matter which way you do it, whether it be through stories, whether it be through, I might do some somatic, let's ask the body what's sitting in there. We might do some younger self exercises or take ourselves back, regress a little, find out what the situation was, that type of thing. That is where we can come up against certain blocks, which is interesting, and what those blocks might be. We're very good at protecting ourselves.
Mm.
And I
Yes.
just think it's such a good thing to tackle in terms of it can feel very overwhelming to kind of think, well, I'm going to delve into myself and see what my beliefs are. That in and of itself is kind of, I don't know about you, but the thought of that is potentially quite overwhelming.
Yeah. So,
And we have these inbuilt mechanisms that protect us from ourselves in a way. And they've worked really, really well in certain circumstances. And so this idea of safe space, this idea of um, becoming self-compassionate. I think I've used that before, but it seems to run through everything in my work and with myself. It really starts with this idea of, okay, I matter to me. I matter to me. So therefore, it's worth it to me that I want to understand myself. That's a given first, or not a given, actually. I think it's worthwhile actually saying. And then we start the process. But the process, I find, I don't know about you, has to begin with something like you said, I'm nervous about driving, or driving really causes me anxiety. It's got to be something you're experiencing, isn't it? That you don't necessarily want to experience.
yes, it does. And so you're identifying something in the present that is affecting your life, but you're trying to go as far back as possible to find
Mm.
the original core belief.
Yes.
And that might not be like a super traumatic event. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's actually a smaller event, but it's
It can be the
created.
smallest
Yeah,
sometimes.
but
This
it's
is what's so interesting about it.
it is. And so you kind of dismiss it as like, oh, I don't have anything super traumatic. But you dismiss it. But actually it's been built upon over years with different experiences and it's turned into this big, huge core belief that is very difficult to change. And you're right, when you're trying to go that far into the past, then you'll have all the protector parts, because that's the language I use, that come out that you speak to first. So that's the crux of IFS, internal family systems, is first you go to the protector parts, you don't go to the child parts. And you could work with those protector parts that are stopping you from accessing the core memory for months
Mm,
to understand their role and
mm,
understand why they're protecting the younger part and why they
mm.
don't feel like it's necessary. That's a whole process. So you're right.
Yes.
It's not as simple. I think what we're both trying to say is it's not as simple as one day you sit down and you go, I'm going to identify my core belief, and then it suddenly magically arrives. It
That's
doesn't.
it.
It's a
And I
process.
don't know about you, but I've had many people along the way in my journey that have helped me
Yes.
and
Yeah.
continue to,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
Like,
and I thank all of those people because they all held my hand in one way or another to to relax, be relaxed and know that I'm okay,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because it's a big thing. It's a big thing.
It's a huge
And
thing.
as you say, I love how you brought that up because it's just quite fascinating. You know, if I've had regression clients and we've gone back to the first event, the initial event, and they've gone, I had one lady, this is a really good story actually. I can't remember what the issue was, but we went back to when she was 2 and her mother had thrown out her toys. Some toys that she no longer played with. Oh, I remember the issue. And it was so fascinating to her because it was just such a small, like it wasn't anything when she re went back to that time and experienced it. It wasn't anything that in that moment she was, distraught about. But what she took away from that moment was, I don't get a say.
Mm,
I don't get a say in what happens. And as you say, there was probably following events, more things in life. But when you've sort of got the file open, when you've sort of got the kind of the starting point, the starting belief, then our minds have a habit of this is actually quite interesting too, have a habit of seeing it. I don't know about you, but whenever I've wanted to buy a new car in the past, I would do a bit of research and I decide on a car. I'm seeing that car everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm seeing it on the road. People are passing me on with that car. Before I'd looked at that car, I was never seeing that car. This is the thing about the mind. It's so fascinating when it becomes aware of something that it's really aware of it. And so, the first event would be something like, oh my goodness, how amazing. Because it was very clear to this woman that that was where that belief was formed.
mm,
No doubt in her mind.
yeah. Yeah, because our psyche knows our mi mind is amazing, and the things that are in the subconscious, once you identify them, there's a very clear link, and you immediately know that that's the one, that's the thing, that's the event, that's the experience. So, yeah, absolutely, which is why, yeah,
And
it's
to
like
your
the
point, they're not
intuition.
always big,
They're not always big.
big
Often they're not.
dramatic things.
No,
Yeah.
often they're not. But it starts from one thing and then it just amplifies. That belief gets so heavily conditioned into you because
Yes.
that's the story that then you apply. As a child, you don't know any different.
That's
You
it.
apply
The
it to
story gets
situations.
applied. Yes,
When you
absolutely.
when you don't have an explanation for why something happened, you apply what knowledge you already have. And as a child, if you've got the knowledge, like the example you had that, you don't have a voice or you don't have a say, then every single time, and it again could be such a small experience, like maybe you're at school and the teacher asks, does anyone know the answer to this question? And three people put their hand up and you don't get chosen. Again, it's just one of those micro experiences of, oh, my voice doesn't matter. I never
Hmm.
get chosen. And it just amplifies. It can literally be hundreds and hundreds of times that gets amplified over a long period of time.
Yes. So the actual process to uncovering our internalized beliefs is already fascinating, let alone what comes after.
Mm,
And again, going into the body with some of those beliefs can be very confronting
mm,
because a lot of us don't spend a lot of our time in our bodies
mm,
because is is stored in there. A lot of stuff that just is uncomfortable and it's stored in there. So again, that can be a very good way of really understanding with compassion, self-compassion, to understand where something started, something that's not so comfortable, where it
absolutely.
began,
Yeah.
often through no fault of ours. In fact,
Oh,
just about every single time.
yeah. It's not our
It's
fault.
like we're just absorbing, we're in these little beings, just
Yeah.
absorbing what's going on around us, trying to do it right. We don't know. Um,
We don't know, but also
yeah.
often our parents don't know. It's not their fault. Like
No,
I don't blame
absolutely.
my dad for telling all of
No.
these
He was
critical
just
things. He's just doing
being
his
him.
thing.
Yeah.
As your example, I'm sure she doesn't blame her mother. Like
No,
there
not
was
at
probably
all.
an altruistic intention of like, oh, I'll just clear some space and like, it doesn't have to have a meanness or like a
Well, I
horrible
don't think
reason
parents
for it.
set out
So
to go and be mean to their children. I think it's the underbelly of learning, isn't it?
yeah, it
You
is.
know,
It is, but back, you're saying in the body, I think that's really important. I think that's how we both work very, very much. That's an integral part of both of our work. And maybe we do it a little differently as well, but again, I guess we have our own language and frameworks for doing that. But for
yeah.
me, like every part or every belief has an energy to it or a visual. So if someone's not a visual person, it could be an emotion. So I try and find what's attached to that particular thought. So take the core belief. There'll
Yep.
be a behavior, a reaction, and an energy, and a place that lives in the body. And that could
Yes.
be, so it could be in the gut, it could be in the head, it could be in the chest, it could be in the hat, it could be anywhere in the body. But I try and really explore that. That's, I guess, what I do with my clients is I really try and understand like does it in the language that works for them like does it
Yes.
let's really kind of like understand the whole archetype of this core belief, and that could be an archetype that could go into astrology as well, that
Of
could go into
course.
mythology because we're
Yeah.
so creative and imaginative beings that we can there's so many ways of working with it, and it can actually be such a beautiful process as well. It's not always, a horrible process. It's actually can be very empowering and very
Oh, I think that's
uplifting and
100%. It is very empowering. And I love the way that you've brought in all those different things because what I find with the work is each person is experiencing what's within and what's inhabiting different parts of them, their bodies, in different ways. Some might just feel, as you say, their attention is drawn to a certain part of their body, or there's a kind of a heat, or there's like a heaviness. Other people who go straight to their younger self, where they were, what they were doing, who was there, who wasn't there, and it's everything in between. And none of it is wrong. It's really about understanding our own way of filing, I guess,
yes,
filing
yeah.
things.
That's a really
In
good
our
way of saying it. Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Just like we would all file things in different ways. Like some people want all the color coded,
Yeah,
files.
that's
We all
it.
have a different way. So that's why I'm saying like I don't try and force my way, which is very extremely visual and imaginative. I don't try
Yes,
and force that way onto other people. Because if you're not a visual person, that's just not going to work for you. So like
no,
you say, sometimes it is just a sensation, sometimes it's just an emotion. Sometimes it's just a sense, like the smallest sense of something
that's
that,
it.
you know,
Yes.
or sometimes it's just a pure color.
Yeah.
I've worked with a few people where it's just a color. It's like, oh,
Yep, me
that's
too.
okay, yeah, so that's cool. Like, oh, that's pink or that's brown and I'm like, okay, cool. And then that goes into the body somewhere, and I'm trying to give examples of lots of different things so that
Had one person, there's some people will see something like a hammer, or some
yes,
people will see like
yes.
in this area of my body, I see a ball of, how people used to make balls with rubber bands.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And it was
Yes. I love
really,
that.
and it was just fascinating to see where we went, with this
Yes.
ball of rubber bands and
This
what was involved in that. And it really, it's so individual.
it's so
This is
individual. That's where I
amazing.
get so excited that because those are the
Yeah.
visual things, and I'm like, oh, I love it. I so understand the rubber ball of bands. Um, I once had like in my chest here, like autumn leaves that had like all brown and scrumpled all together.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
working with a psychotherapist at the time, and she was like massaging that area, and we were trying to clear and then they all started to swirl and then blow around, and then they became green, and then they just left my body. And so
Yeah.
that's a
Wow.
very visual
That's a
example.
really good point. Sometimes there's no tangible story, or there's no tangible resolution other than something visual or felt,
Mm,
or just
yes.
a letting go of something, like a
Yeah.
relaxation, or
Yes.
just a lightness, or color coming in or light coming in. And that's all the resolution that was required in the moment.
Absolutely. There's so many ways. All of those, absolutely. And the posture change. Sometimes people go, oh, they move backwards
Yeah.
or that there's all the posture changes. And sometimes it can just be a word. They'll just get a word freedom
That's it.
or,
That's it.
like
Yes,
something like that.
exactly.
So
Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is like, yeah, I think we're both getting so excited about this because I love
Well,
this.
like I don't know about you, but like from a personal point of view, once I got the understanding of how things worked,
Mm,
generally in terms of I've taken all these things in, I've taken stuff in, and it's been really important because a lot of it has helped me operate, move through life, make different decisions, some good, some not so good, whatever they were, everything was a learning. And when I became more and more comfortable with this idea that that was mine,
mm,
and I didn't have to change it for anyone else. I didn't have to explain it to anyone else. It became such a like this personal treasure chest, if you like, that I could open at will and pull out those pearls and look at them, or decide that those old coins were a bit tarnished and maybe they needed to move on or be cleaned and put back. And it all became my treasure chest to understand how I work and how I want to continue to work. So
yeah.
that's where it gets really so satisfying,
Yeah,
I think.
I think that's what we both do is we help people build their own language around it, their own framework on how to relate to themselves internally, that
Yes.
inner self, their inner parts, the inner psyche, whatever you want to call it. So we help build that personal language because it will be different for everyone and it will be experienced differently. So yeah,
And,
it's a beautiful
the
process.
languaging I often use is, you know, if- before today, all of my previous selves have been working with me to get me to here. Often we can, I don't know, go back in time and think, I was really stupid then, or didn't do it right. That was a
Mm,
really bad decision. And a lot of the work is around going back to those times and really accepting that younger us in that moment as doing the best they could.
Yeah.
And they had a part to play in getting us here. And that whole level of self-acceptance that comes with understanding not only our internalized beliefs, but how they played out in our lives at
Yeah.
different times, in different ways, for different reasons. That overarching idea that all, to use your language, parts at different times were at play. And I love that whole timeline thing of
Mm.
everything previous to today. And are we happy with all the previous versions of ourselves?
Yeah.
You know?
And I often go to the future too. I really like doing the future stuff,
Mm,
like
mm,
imagining myself as like an 80 or 90-year-old and
mm.
and I'm there visiting my older self and I have a whole visual around it. And then seeing if she's proud of what I'm doing in this moment, or seeing if she can see a pathway of like where the possibilities of where I could go next.
Beautiful.
So I love
Yes.
doing that as much as I love going to the younger parts. I actually like going to my older parts.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's really, really important and it's something that is very strong in my life now as I'm aging, getting older. I remember doing a workshop many years ago, and for some reason, I can't remember the exercise we were doing, but I was this old lady tending a fire in a forest with all these leaves in my hair.
Oh,
And
really?
I loved it because firstly, I was mobile. I'd made the fire myself.
I
But
love it.
I was in nature and I was incredibly happy. And so that image stays with me
That's,
all the
yes.
time. And it's like it informs my present self.
Yeah.
In ways that are so alchemic because, you know, uh, being in my 60s is some days I'm just not feeling that good for whatever reason. But I defer to that older me. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, still can build a fire,
Yeah.
still could be
And
be enjoying.
I'd
That's
like,
okay. I might be having a bit of a joint soreness today, but it's going to be all right, and it immediately
yeah.
calms me.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love the image that just got created in my mind of you with the leaves in your hair, with dancing around a fire. That's how
Watch
I
out.
imagine you.
If you
Yeah,
detect
I'm
any
like,
leaves there, that's
I
like
feel
you're going to
like
have to
I want
say
to
something. It's
join
not
you.
time yet.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I want to join you around the fire with leaves in my hair, but that will come with an emotion, and that's the emotion.
Yes,
What you're
the emotion,
describing,
that's it.
yeah. And
Yep.
what is that emotion when you look at that woman like around the fire with leaves in her
Yes.
hair, like
Comfortable.
comfortable? Yeah, yeah.
Comfortable and I would say comfortable and content.
Mm. Yes, I
Yeah.
love that. And for me, when I visualize that older version of me and I'm visiting her and she's just sat in the chair and she's quite sassy and like quite cool. It doesn't almost feel like me, but it is me. And it kind of informs my choices in the present because I'm like, what would she be like proud? Like, what would she think's really cool? Because she's really got an attitude and she's sat in this chair and she's just like, yeah, that was a really cool choice. Like, yeah. There's like so the emotion that comes to from me is like a validation, I guess, like that I'm on the right path. Like it's
Yeah.
like she validates the choice. So I always like run it past her. Would this be a good story when I'm older? I guess that's where I go. She's at the end of the book and she,
Yes.
she
Yes.
she's at the end of the book and she's kind of like directing like, well, what does her story, how does she want this to unfold? We've got choices. Which one is going to make my older self most proud and go, yeah, that was really cool. That was really fun, or that was a really good choice.
I think that's a good point to end on. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I
I
think
think,
that's really
we've
good.
cut the journey, the internalized beliefs, how we can be gentle with ourselves in uncovering those internalized beliefs. There's being aware that we've protected ourselves to a certain extent, to a lesser or greater extent, depending on the issue, and that we have future selves that we're using as a way to inform our present.
Yes, absolutely. And there's
It's
no one
wonderful.
way of doing it.
Then there's no one way of doing it. Exactly.
It's
All
your
roads lead to
story.
the
Yeah,
same thing. Yeah.
you're the author
Fabulous.
of your story. We'll end on a cliche.
I love it. Fabulous, Jewel.
All right, love it. Thank you, Sarita. We'll chat
Thank
next
you.
time.
Fabulous.